Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning into the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, can you feel it?
I can feel it.
Can you feel it?
I could feel it. Not that much. I don't feel that much.
I was going to say, maybe not that much. We don't need to go, full Phil Collins in the secondary, but I appreciate the serenade, Dan.
Great voice, right? Great voice of radio.
Outside of Dan Wolkenstein's serenading skills, we are super pumped because not only is it the NFL Combine week, super stoked for this because this is where the draft talk really starts getting going. And normally I'd be on this show talking about Dan Wolkenstein working the phones and giving Dan all of his credit because he definitely deserves it. He deserves his roses every time that we have a special guest on this show. But for once in this time, I'm going to give myself the roses. I'm going to give myself the roses.
As you should. Jake hitting the phone. When the Jake hits the phone, good things happen.
When Jake hits the occasional phone one time, 1 out of 500 chances it's something is going to go right. Yes, that's pretty much what it is. We're super stoked today to have on location at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indy, boots on the ground currently as we speak, Mr. Devin Jackson, who has been a college football writer for the Philly Inquirer now for some time. Guys, if you haven't been following him, he is a great follow on Twitter as it relates to just his coverage on draft prospects in general, and we are super excited to have him join the show today. So coming up next, our interview with Philly Inquirer's own Devin Jackson, talking everything about the NFL Scouting Combine. Well, with the NFL Combine drills just 24 hours away from kickoff, we are so excited here on Chargers Unleashed to bring on one of the best guys. If you have not been watching his coverage throughout all of college football season, Devin Jackson, college writer for the Philly Inquirer, is now joining us on Chargers Unleashed. Boots on the ground. He is there in Indy, was there for all of the first day press conferences with all of the defensive linemen, edge, and linebacker players that are set to go to kickoff day one tomorrow. Devin Jackson, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a busy morning and afternoon so far, but I'm glad to get it all over with. Gonna head to the Pacers Pelicans game tonight in town later tonight to decompress from a busy first day at the Combine. But so far so good. Can't complain about being able to be here covering it and just getting to talk to some of these up and coming prospects that a lot of people will know once they get drafted.
That's a nice little palate cleanser, too, because you do all your interviews today. You're there in the midst of the media and talking to these guys. And then you go off and you just, get away from football for a second. And then I'm going to come right back to when the drill starts. That's a good little break and palate cleanser. So what we wanted to do is we got a big week ahead of us. And as much as you have been covering this and looking forward to this and around with everybody in terms of what's going to happen, this is really when the draft talk starts going to the top. But we wanted to kind of go day by day, position by position, kind of get your thoughts on everything as it relates to guys that you've been looking at, guys that everybody should be watching, maybe some guys who aren't getting talked about as much. So let's start it off with day one tomorrow. Defensive linemen, edge, and linebackers. I know you had gotten a chance to talk to a variety of them earlier today, but just overall as a whole, what do you make of these groups and who are the ones that you're looking forward to watching tomorrow?
Yeah, so with each group, they're clear top of the line guys, and it's interesting. Each group kind of has question marks as well. So we'll start with linebacker because that's the first one that's on my mind. Really, it's the discussion between Peyton Wilson, Edgerrin Cooper, and Junior Colson seem to be the top three guys, I would say. And Jeremiah Charr is somewhere in that mix, but probably not as high. But I would say those are the top three guys. But Wilson, with his medical history, how is that going to all shake out? But in terms of him being at the podium, I mean, he was awesome. He was able to give insightful answers about the future of linebacker, how it's changed, over the last decade. His own mentality. He had a great quote of the day, basically saying something along the lines of, wherever you are, I'm going to meet you in the hole. Even if you beat me, I'll come back 100 times stronger. So you just love to hear that from a guy like that. Edgerrin Cooper talking about his versatility, ability to spy quarterbacks, his run and chase ability, versatility among teams as well. They kind of vary where he's going to play, whether it's Mike, whether it's a Will, a Sam backer. I personally like him at Will or Sam, but just to be able to hear him kind of articulate that was awesome. And then Junior Colson, bit of a quieter of the two previous guys, but confident as well. And I think he's going to do some nice things on the field. But looking at the position as a whole, I think what's really going to be kind of stark to see just as how smooth some of these guys are in their coverage drops in the on-field drills. Because obviously the speed, some of the agility testing are going to be big, especially like the 20-yard shuttle, seeing these guys 10-yard splits, seeing their lower body explosiveness with the jumps. But I think overall you want to see how they move in the open field. How do they turn their hips? Do they have tight hips? Do they have hips that maybe slightly tight, or are they able to smoothly move from one area to the next? So I'm really interested to see specifically in that part of the evaluation of the combine. And same thing with edge rusher. I think it's going to be obviously the eye-popping numbers, how fast these guys run, how high they jump, how far they jump in the broad jump. The three cone I think is going to be interesting to watch with some of these edge rushers as well. There's some guys that are more power guys like Braylon Trice, Jared Verse, and may not have necessarily the quick twitch ability as some of these other guys do, like Latu and Dallas Turner and Chop Robinson especially. But I think seeing the kind of dynamic of, all right, are you a power guy? Are you a more of a slippery speed guy? How do you move? How do you bend? Do you bend fluidly? Is there some hitch in your bend? So again, the on-field drills I think are going to be really telling in just how fluid and athletic these guys are. Because there's a difference between being fast and being truly athletic for the position. So I think it's really going to separate the two there. And then finally, the defensive line class. Really, I want to see how Byron Murphy tests. I think I think that's kind of where we're at this point. And obviously where T'Vondre Sweat ends up weighing in, I think it's going to be a big thing. And at his podium, he kind of joked about it. He said, well, we'll see tomorrow, but he seems to feel comfortable about his playing weight. But Byron Murphy, I think, is kind of the headliner of the show. And I just want to see what type of numbers he puts up and then how he looks in the open field. I think that's going to be the most fascinating part, especially for that defensive line group.
You mentioned the testing from this group in particular. Now, we know about like the Chop Robinsons, the Peyton Wilsons, the Chris Jenkins, guys who were expected to come in out of this group and test really well. Is there somebody out of this group that maybe just hasn't been getting enough love in terms of, hey, watch out for this guy when it comes to testing tomorrow because he could open some eyes?
I would say two names. Adisa Isaac from Penn State, I think, is going to have a really big testing day as well. Penn State seems to always, have these freak athletes and guys that test off the charts. And I think he's fits that mold. I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl, and he was going through pass rush drills, and just his ability to weight transfer, to shift his weight low, and really not lose a step. Him and Latu were going back to back in those drills, and they both look extremely smooth in doing so. So I'll put some money on Adisa Isaac having a big day, and then again I'll go another edge rusher, and I'll go Austin Booker from Kansas, a guy that has less than 600 pass rush snaps this season, or in his career, I should say, and there's so much untapped potential. You can tell that he's extremely athletic, extremely fluid. And I think him having a really big testing day is going to solidify a day two grade for most teams and what they're looking for. But he's kind of my edge sleeper in this class in terms of just isn't getting enough love because he doesn't have as much film as some of these other guys. But I would say those are the two names that stick out. Just looking at the linebacker group, like I said, I think it's more so in answering questions on how these guys move in the open field. So I think a guy like Jeremiah Trotter Jr. could really benefit from a strong day, showing his ability to move in coverage and drop in the coverage and uh, be able to handle that ability. But I keep an eye on Trevor Wallace as well from Kentucky. He's a guy that I think has all the athletic tools right now, but is still learning and growing in the position at the linebacker position.
Now, I'm going to try to spin this because I'm going to look at it as a positive. The Chargers have an equal opportunity to draft almost any position, and they probably need it. So I think the combine and the draft are probably more important to them at more positions than most teams. And I look at the new era of Chargers football. We got Joe Ortiz now drafting, and given with his experience with Baltimore, we have the Jim Harbaugh style, Greg Roman, Jesse Minter as the coordinators of offense and defense. And then you kind of go forward to looking at the holes on this roster. Looking at day two, guys, we talk about the DBs, tight ends, both of which are huge needs for this Chargers team. Tight ends for the Chargers kind of barren at this point currently on the roster. Cornerback room last year was very subpar. Michael Davis now looking like a free agency kind of key piece there for external teams. But looking at the combine, corners, tight ends, very different positions, both huge positions of need. Who are some? I mean, we know a lot of the names, the first round guys, but in terms of those two positions, tight end's probably the one that's the most unknown after the top two with Sanders and Bowers. What's your take on kind of the day two corners and the tight ends that might see draft stock rise more than others come this week?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating to see kind of that second and third tier of corners because the corner class in general is so deep, but where are those guys going to play at the next level? I think is the biggest question. But guy that immediately jumps off to me at the very least is Kamari Lassiter from Georgia as kind of a potential second, third round guy. I love his instincts. I love his ability to locate the football downfield, stay in phase, and then also the ability to play nickel as well. He did so in that Missouri game to match up with Luther Burden, who is going to be a really good NFL player in the future. But I really like that inside-out ability, and I think it's going to be valuable for teams. But I'm very excited to see how athletic is he, because you can tell like he's fast enough to keep up with players downfield and run stride for stride, but just how explosive is he? And I think you can't really tell on film because he's always in the right spot and hardly gets beat. So that's definitely a plus for him. But you just want to see just how fast he is, especially in changing directions as well, since they play a little bit of everything coverage-wise at Georgia. So he's a guy that sticks out to me. TJ Tampa from Iowa State is another player that really sticks out to me. That I'm not sure where exactly his his range is, because on one hand he's long, he's athletic, has the ability to play press man, has the ability to undercut routes, and just everything you look for in a modern corner. And I feel like he's still not getting quite enough love, especially after not going to any All-Star games during the early part of the draft cycle. So he's still, I would say, very largely unknown name, and really you can't really get a bead on how teams feel about him at the current moment. But I feel like he might be one of those players that the teams are quiet about because they want him to fall to him, in that second or third round area. But I'm excited to see one, how he tests, and then two, how fluid is he switching or flipping his hips and going down the line. How consistent is he out of his back pedal? I just think those are things that we're a little inconsistent on his tape, but I think he's still a really good corner. So those are the top two names I would say corner wise. I'm looking forward to most seeing, just because they're really good on tape and they have some really good film and redeemable qualities, but you want to see how fast they are, how athletic they are compared to some of their peers. I'll go to tight end now.
And I want to ask you real quick before you get tight end. On the note, and I apologize for interrupting you. The cornerback group is an interesting position to me in that you hear a lot of times, whether it's quarterbacks or you see receivers that come from big name schools versus small schools, and how impactful, how much that matters to teams. From what you've seen there at the combine, you talked about those two guys. I mean, Kamari Lassiter, Georgia kid. Talk about TJ Tampa, Iowa State. We hear Quinyon Mitchell comes from Toledo. Then you got guys like Terran Arnold and Kool-Aid who are come from Alabama. Like the quarterback position specifically, it doesn't matter if you're an SEC kid or not, or is that something that's really more case by case basis?
I think it's more a case by case basis. I would say it matters to some degree just because the caliber of athletes you face sometimes at small schools aren't as comparable. But I think Quinyon Mitchell is a great example of a guy that has shown the ability, not only on his tape, but obviously at the Senior Bowl to be able to do both. So that's kind of especially for the small school and group of five players. I think it's really important, for them to be able to show themselves, especially in an all-star game setting. But when it comes to like if they don't get that exposure, I think it matters to some degree. But if you're a fast, quick twitch athlete, it's going to translate. Even if it may not be the same, caliber of athlete you're facing every game, and it's just going to be a different learning curve, I would say. Because corners in general, the cornerback position is a very uneven position in terms of development. It really depends on scheme, personnel, and what positions you're put in. From one year to year, you always see that position kind of change in who the top guys are that particular year. Like James Bradbury is a good example. People, especially after the Eagles Super Bowl run, everyone thought that him and Slay were possibly a top 10 duo, as a DB unit. Next season, not so much. So I think when it comes to evaluation part, I think it matters where you play to some degree, but it also doesn't. Just because what you have is going to translate, even if the guys you're going against aren't. It's just the learning curve is going to be maybe a little bit longer than a guy from big school.
Got it. All right. And then going to the tight ends again, after Sanders, after Bowers, who are maybe one or two guys that people don't know of or haven't heard enough of that come, day 2? So Friday, we'll know.
Yeah. So I think the top answer for me will probably be Theo Johnson from Penn State. And his production really just doesn't do him justice. I think their style of offense didn't allow him to get those run after catch opportunities. He also played next to Tyler Warren, who's going to be a really good tight end when he comes out potentially next season. And the opportunities were just slim for him. But his athletic profile is apparent. You can see it at the Senior Bowl. You can see it in flashes on tape. And I really think he's going to test really, really well for his position, for the tight end position. I think he's going to run well. I think he's going to put up some great numbers. You can see the change of direction ability when he's running routes. He's still growing as a route runner per se, but the big frame, 6'6", like 250, 260, and the ability to move downfield, beat linebackers and safeties, you really can't replicate that. So he will be kind of in that next tier of tight end, I say, to watch in a chance for him to surprise people just how athletic he is, giving the limited opportunities. He has a nice baseline of blocking as well, just from Penn State being more of a run-heavy team, which is what you like to see. But I think his pass-catching ability is what's going to set him up. And then I'll go Jared Wiley from TCU is a guy to watch as well. I think he has a chance to be one of the faster tight ends in this group, and really is a nice athletic pass catcher. I think he's more the pass catcher type for the NFL level, but I really like what he brings in his skill set, and I think he'll have a nice day as well. And then probably my sleeper of the group is Trey Knox from South Carolina. I've liked his tape going back to when he was at Arkansas. But I think he's more of a late round guy. I think he's a guy that probably is a 6, 7 round pick, more of a depth piece, tight end. But I would really like a team to use him, especially in the red zone, use his height, his size, and put him in some jump ball scenarios. And I think he has some redeemable qualities to make a 53-man roster and be the second, third tight end sometime next season.
And Jake, this is the fun part. I know we're going to get to these positions, but like we're talking about guys here, late round draft picks, possibly. Jared Wiley's on, looks at PFF big board, by the way, just to kind of spot check here. Jared Wiley, number 268 on the board. Theo Johnson, 157. Like we're talking about guys who, again, everybody has their own grades on it. Everybody has who they think are going to go when, but this is where kind of the cream rises to the top. This is where the diamonds in the rough, so to speak, come about. And this is where this stuff becomes fun, is you start to see names that you've never heard of before, at least the common folk. But guys like Devin Jackson, who are sitting there eating, breathing, sleeping, all this stuff, they know. So this is the fun part, is hearing names that you might not know, but you will when you see them on tape.
Devin, Saturday we've got two position groups that honestly could not be more polar opposite of one another just in terms of draft value. You have the wide receivers and you've got the running backs. I want to start with the wide receivers just because it's very top heavy in terms of priority where teams could be looking to invest in. Obviously, you have the big three with Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors. I want to just talk about just in general, obviously go through the big three. And obviously you have Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin later on that could possibly sneak into the first round after that. But what's your temperature just on this wide receiver group at the big three position? Maybe who's making a little bit more noise, because now we're hearing rumblings of Rome Odunze starting to get a lot more draft attention. And then outside of the big three, just as it relates to beyond that, day 2, day 3, who would be some favorite selections of yours? So let's start with the big three.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation because they all bring something a little bit different. Marvin Harrison Jr. is such a fantastic prospect. His ability to create separation in his size, to move at that size, and really be a dynamic playmaker downfield. Despite some of the Ohio State struggles this year in the passing game, still be a steady force for that offense. Just goes to show just the caliber athlete he is. You really don't get too many guys that are built like him, that can move like him, and just can pull away as well. I think that's the most impressive part, is he's not just a downfield, jump ball type of guy. He can run the intermediate routes. He can run the short routes, and they all look the same, and they look very professional. So I can't say enough about Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the top players in draft. Might be the top player in the draft, depending on who you ask, but he's such a great player. The conversation between Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze is interesting. Personally, I have Odunze as 2 and Neighbors as 3, but the margins are thin. It really is kind of a choose your own flavor type of class, where if you want the more exciting run after catch type of player that can win in the win on the inside, win on the outside, and really create some dynamic plays for you in the passing game, Malik Neighbors is your guy. Rome Odunze, I think what astounds me about his evaluation is not necessarily his rate in which he catches contested passes, but more so his ability to contort his body and have amazing body control in doing so. He tracks the ball as well as any receiver I've evaluated going back to 2019. Like, his tracking abilities is unreal. Just the way that he fades into the ball, his late hands when there's a defensive back right on his back. I mean, it's really an awesome sight to see. So for me, I value that a little bit more with the Odunze versus Neighbors, but overall, I mean, these are 3 top 10 picks in my book. I think they should all go in the top 10, and I expect each one of them to be successful at the NFL level, because they have the traits and build and athleticism to do so. Odunze will be the only one of the 3 that will be actually performing at the combine, which will be interesting to see where exactly he measures in that. But from what I've at least been hearing is that it's going to be somewhere in the 4.4s that he'll run, and he'll check all the boxes in terms of his athleticism, explosion, etc. So I wouldn't be too surprised about that. As it comes to kind of some day two, day three options, it's probably the most robust position group of the day two, day three. Options of any position group really here at the combine. But there's two guys for me that I think need to have big weeks just to solidify exactly where they're going to be end up getting drafted. And for me, not necessarily a day two guy. So I'll give you three names. So one other guy in round one, or a potential round one guy that I think needs to have a big week, is Keon Coleman from Florida State. Really great, big athlete, explosive, but needs some refinement as a route runner. Not as successful in those contested catch situations as you would think of a guy his size, but I think overall he's a really good football player that just needs his skills to be honed in a little bit. But I want to see where exactly he runs, how he tests, how he moves, especially in those route running scenarios. I think it will be important for him to show that he has grown in that area in the off season and getting prepared to make the NFL jump. So I think that'll be important for him. Now getting to the day two, day three guys. For me, one guy that sticks out is another Washington receiver, and that's Jalen Polk. I really like his game. I really like his ability to go up and make the tough catches. Yeah, his ability to run routes on the inside, on the outside. Really sure-handed catcher as well. I just love his tenacity and fearlessness that he plays with down the field. But I want to see what type of athlete he is. I just haven't come away with his film knowing exactly where he sits. He's definitely above average athlete, but I don't think he's one of these quick, twitchy guys that you may see go and test at the combine. So I want to see where he stacks up amongst his peers. Then the other one that I'm really looking forward to is Ricky Pearsall from Florida. Really, really good athlete, really good route runner, really dynamic as a route runner as well. I just really like his ability to, or his understanding of defensive schemes, where to sit, zone coverage, how to attack defensive backs leverage. He had a really good week at the Senior Bowl, and he's one of my guys that I would want to draft regardless of teams because he also brings a toughness and edge to him, especially as a run blocker. I love what he does as a blocker downfield, and he feels like, to me, the perfect like Shanahan, McVay scheme type of receiver where he's going to do the dirty work for you and he's going to be reliable in third downs for you.
Now we shift over to the running back in this scenario, and I've talked to Dan about this several times because you ask anybody with this particular running back class, and it seems like everybody has a different guy at number one, whether you're talking about Braylon Allen, Brooks, whoever it may be. And it just there's no Bijan Robinson in this class. There's no Gibbs in this class. And there's even discussion as far as, well, where's the ceiling? When does the running back conversation even start when it relates to this draft? I guess as it relates to this group in particular, in terms of what you would be watching for when they're going through combine drills, who's got the best opportunity to elevate their draft stock? And in particular to you, when you've seen this group, what sticks out to you the most in terms of what you're watching to see someone who may separate themselves?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to probably most in terms of on how they test will probably be Jalen Wright from Tennessee. He feels like the quintessential like home run 3-down back that the NFL looks for, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to participate in the Senior Bowl, but I really think this could be a platform for him to become, maybe in that conversation as one of the top running backs drafted in this class. Really like his physical profile, his true straight line speed, really a one cut and go type of runner. And I just like what he does in the open field and how he can pull away from defenders. So I think he has a shot to be really good at the NFL level and have a really good combine week. At the group as a whole, it feels like right around late round two, early round three is where feels like the sweet spot in terms of where the run on running backs could start. Because I certainly think there will be like 4 or 5 taken, before the end of round three, just because teams need that running back, and they obviously is not a there's not a guy that is worth the first round pick this year, maybe not even a second round pick, but in terms of like building depth, adding another running back option, I think it's really important for these guys to go out and test well. So, for me, like guys like Bucky Irving is kind of interesting in terms of how he's being valued, and if he's being valued by the league, just because how small he is. In smaller backs tend to fall down the board a little bit just because the durability concerns always come up. So I'm interested to see smaller backs like him, Jaden Sheridan from Monmouth, who is truly a deep sleeper in this class. One of the most explosive running backs in this class. Speed wise, I would put money as him being one of the top performers in the speed, the speed and agility drills at the combine. But those are two smaller guys that are not going to be for every team. So it's going to be interesting to see if teams are going to value the guy that they want to take there, in the third round, or they can wait to the fourth, fifth round to address it. But I think a running back run will start sometime in the third round. It could go into the fourth and fifth round, just with teams getting their guy and adding a guy, kind of at a cheaper price than you would typically see.
We're talking to Devin Jackson here. Now, two sides of the same coin. You can run the ball by either having an effective running back or an offensive line, which the Chargers didn't really have either, especially moving into this season. Now, the Chargers, we talk about day one, we talk about 5 overall. A lot of people talk about Malik Neighbors, talk about Brock Bowers. Some people talked about going offensive line, going right tackle for the Chargers specifically at 5. But then possibly Joe Ortiz yesterday during some of the press stuff that he was doing was talking about this being a deep class for the offensive tackle position. What's your take on the Chargers specifically? One, is a right tackle at 5 overall ludicrous? First question. And then a follow-up on that. When would be a good time for the Chargers with so many holes to fill, given a Harbaugh type team? When would be a good time for them to focus on it, and who would be some guys to look at?
I would say taking a right tackle at 5 would, I would say, be just a little rich.
How little?
Just based
How
on
little rich? Like a lot of rich or a little rich?
I would say somewhere in between. Like I would not be opposed to it because I really like JC Latham, for example. I really like what he brings, and I like the potential fit that he brings to the Chargers. But at 5 overall, it's tough. It's a tough sell for sure. Just taking a tackle at 5 overall. So I would say personally, I probably would feel more comfortable taking a right tackle in any time after 10, probably, in that 10 to like 14, 15 range. So, a potential trade back, I would say, from 5 would certainly make right tackle, I think, the forefront. But if you stay at 5 and take a right tackle, I don't think it's the end of the world. I just don't think I don't know if I can talk myself into Talicia Fuaga or JC Latham at 5 overall. Although both of them are really, really good players. And I think they would certainly fill a need that the Chargers have. But I just think at 5, you have to take a player that I don't want to say is a transcendent talent, but a guy that you feel like is going to make an immediate impact in potential franchise cornerstone. That's typically guys you take in that range. So if they feel comfortable doing so, I don't blame them. I think building through trenches is the fastest way to get back on track, because that's the one area that league wide is teams are struggling with. Not only identifying top end talent, but developing it and then having depth to continue to play at a high level even if injuries happen. So I think trench play, whether it's at 5, whether it's at 10, 11, 13, if they decide to trade back, I think is a smart play.
No, I mean they need help across the line, and center they currently don't have one. Period. So if you're the Chargers and you need a center, a starting center, in theory a good one, when is like the cutoff? Like when do they have to have one drafted? Like what round is like if you don't have one by this round, like you're kind of SOL.
Probably end of round 2, honestly. I don't think the center class is extremely top heavy, with Frazier, with JPJ, Graham Barton potentially moving to center. I know Cedric Van Pran has some fans, but I think once round 3 starts, and you don't have a center by then, I don't know if I feel confident saying after that point that you would get a guy that would be a long term starter. Like maybe a depth player, maybe a spot starter, but really the class is pretty thin, I would say, at the top in terms of uh, getting starter and potential long term play at the center position with the prospects in this class.
I hope Jor Ortiz heard what you just said in terms of that priority, because if you got to get out of round 2 with a center, I would think that would require the Chargers to trade back and acquire a little bit more draft capital with all the holes that they have left to fill. Okay, so take off your Philadelphia Eagles hat for just a second. Not literally, but figuratively, put the Chargers hat on. If you're Jor Ortiz at 5, we kind of touched on it just a second ago in terms of trading down may be the best type of scenario. But if it's you on the board, let's just say best case scenario, Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze still happens to be there. You're still there at 5. What do you do in that scenario? What would be your best option in terms of how you would start building out this team?
First, I would feel calls to see if someone wants to trade up for one of those guys. Will probably be the first order of business for me, just to see one, the asking price, and two, what I can get in future assets to continue to build the roster. So that will probably be the first move that I make, just to see what it is. But if no one bites, I had to probably choose between the two. I'd probably say Malik Neighbors probably at 5, just because
Talk to me.
I just feel like he's the type of playmaker they need, on offense to be able to create those explosive plays and really take the pressure off of Justin Herbert's back in terms of creating and creating big splash plays. It's just unfortunate that in back-to-back years you had to take first round receivers, but it's not unprecedented. Kind of putting back on my Eagles cap. The Eagles did that with Jalen Reagor, and then took Devontae Smith the next year. So back-to-back first round. So it's not unheard of. Is not anything crazy, but I would say Neighbors to me probably if I don't trade down and no one wants to come up to get one of these guys, I would probably take Neighbors. To build around, and I take a long look at one of the left tackles. Even though one of them would potentially have to move to right tackle, just do some due diligence on that. So I would say the order of guys that I probably pick in that position is Neighbors, Joe Alt, and then Roma Dunze.
Now, last question for you here. We always like asking this question just because it kind of puts things in a more broader perspective. If you're still the Chargers, and if you were to evaluate this roster and say, who would be one guy, regardless of the round, whether it's first, second, third, fourth, whatever it is, if they came away with X player, who would be like a home run selection for him that you think, oh, he's just going to fit with the Chargers perfectly, instantaneous as it relates to production when he hits the ground running, who would be that one guy that you would say would mesh well with the best with this team?
I'm gonna take a cop out answer here and say probably Roman Wilson from Michigan.
It's a great answer.
Knowing Jim Harbaugh and in a relationship he has with his players, he knows what he's getting out of Roman Wilson, and I feel like he's a guy that's just he fits what they need for one, a guy that can make those tough catches over the middle of the field, that can create after the catch, and really be a solid player overall. He just fits what they are going to be looking for to building culture, and he knows Harbaugh. Harbaugh knows his skill set, and and this is obviously in a scenario that the Chargers do trade down and end up taking a tackle in the first round, but taking him in the second round, becoming a guy that becomes a reliable receiver. As Keenan Allen starts to fade in his own career and Quentin Johnson continues to figure it out, having a guy like Wilson who's going to be steady, move the chains for you and kind of be a glue piece offensively, I just think it makes too much sense with what the Chargers need and just his history with Harbaugh.
Devin Jackson, Philly Inquirer, currently down there at the NFL Scouting Combine. Excited to see what this week has in store. Guys, if you have not been following Devin Jackson throughout the entirety of the college football season, number one, you need to get out from underneath the rock that you are currently residing in, and you need to follow him because his draft coverage on NFL prospects when they are going through this process is absolutely second to none. Devin, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate the time. Have a great weekend out there in Indy. Welcome to join the show anytime. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys, and enjoy talking through the combine and getting ready for a busy week of testing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Enjoy the Pelicans game.
Will do.